Hi, welcome to the award-winning Ed Brown Show. And guess what? Dr. Williams, he got another jewel today. I mean, the jewel, I count for something. Now, this young lady, her name is Cola Lewis, Phyllis Cola Lewis, and she has brought a unique book, and that's the title of the book. And you know, that fits me. I count for something. Always said, be positive. Dr. Williams, welcome to the Ed Brown Show.
Thank
you got
you, Ed.
Another terrific guest here.
Thank
She's
you.
an author, and this book, I Count for Something, I mean, it is fantastic. Even have a CD in it.
Yes, she counts for something.
Yes.
That's the reason that she's here today.
Right.
Ed. When I met her, some years ago, I met her in Prince George's County at a book festival, and we were sitting and we exchanged books. You know, my book, Words Crossing Across, Word Search on Barack Obama, and she gave me a copy of her book. I was so impressed with it, and I kept it for about 2 years.
Yeah.
Then one day, I decided to give this book to a friend of mine in Oklahoma City. I wanted his baby girl to have this book. Tyrone Hardman says this is one of the greatest books that he has found for his daughter, and his daughter goes to sleep many nights listening. And she is very excited about this book. So I'm just as excited as well. But you know, Cola has come out with a new version. And I'm going to let her talk to you about that, because we're so proud of her.
Okay. Let's
Thank you,
hear
Doctor.
from I Count for Something.
Well, I Count for Something is a children's book that I was inspired to write for a little boy in a public school system. He was 4 years old, getting ready to go into kindergarten. He didn't know any of his fundamentals to learning, his vowels, his seasons, or planets, and it really bothered me. So I decided to write a poem, I Count for Something, telling him that he was valuable, that he was priceless, that he had a lot of things to feel good about himself. Or because at that moment when I asked him, well, what's your phone number? How can I call your mom or your grandmother? Because he wasn't feeling well, he didn't know it. And he felt a little bad that he didn't know it. And I was like, wow, what's going to happen to our children? It's a little African-American little boy. And I felt very compelled to write him a poem and send it home with him. And I showed it to a master teacher at the school at that time, and she said, this is not just a poem, Cola, this is actually a book, and you need to get it illustrated. And so that's how the journey began. And the main thing was to esteem children, to champion their self-worth, to make them feel good about themselves, and to let them know that there are things that you have that are innately yours because you're a human being, that make you count for something, that make you valuable. And ironically, the fundamentals align with numbers. So it taught like 4 seasons. The book says I have 1 year to be 1 age. I count for something. I have 2 ears, 2 eyes, 2 hands, 2 feet. I count for something. I have 3 reasons to smile, for me, myself, and I. And then it goes on to say I have 4 seasons, I have 5 senses, 6 vowels, 7 continents, and 9 planets, and 8 colors. So it gives all these fundamentals that we have as human beings.
And the uniqueness that you have a CD that's in, you know, when you put your hand on something, it means a lot.
You have a CD. We have a CD. We actually have a lot of talented individuals that have helped me put together the CD. The CD has, it's an instructional CD. So it comes with songs and games and activities. And so the CD teaches money. It teaches counting money,
Great.
the variations for money. The CD talks about the solar systems and the planets and the characteristics of the planets. It talks about continents and what the cultures and the qualities of life that you find on the continents, and introducing children to passports. And we have a song on there, Many Ways to Say Thank You, because in the book it says I have 11 different languages that I can say thank you.
No kidding.
Yes.
Oh, Chinese too?
Chinese is in there. Doje is in there. Doje is in there. French, Cherokee. There are different languages in there. So we have 9 different instructional songs and games that accompany the CD. And the book aligns with the new movement, the National Common Core Standards. So the book aligns with the Common Core Standards, our print, our math concepts, counting our cardinality. But again, it goes back to it builds self-esteem, it builds confidence. And it feels really good to hear a child after they read it say, I count for something, you know, like I'm important, you know, we count for something. And I've learned that over the course of this book evolving, as Mr. Williams said, it went from one phase to another phase, that not only children have appreciated the book. I had an elderly lady, like in her 60s, that purchased the book for her granddaughter. And then I saw her several months later, and she said, I need to purchase another book for my granddaughter. I said, well, I thought you gave the last book to your granddaughter. She said, no. She said, Cola.
I kept that for myself.
She said, I wake up every morning. She did. She said, I wake up every morning, and I grab this book, and I say, I count for something. She said, and I read it. She said, because it makes me feel esteemed as a older woman who lives alone, and it gives me worth, it gives me meaning. And she said, I put the songs on, and I feel good. My best friend, who's a Grammy-winning producer, wrote one of the theme songs. And then I have another young man who's produced for a lot of R&B artists, produced a lot of the songs that are like, we have rap, we have Spanish, we have reggae, and we have, you can't be in D.C. without having a go-go song. So we have all that in the book. And I want our children to have a foundation for fundamentals to learning and to be competitive globally. Because the fundamentals that are taught in this book, the same fundamentals are being taught in Africa, or being taught in Australia, or being taught in China, and different parts of Europe, because everyone in the world has seasons.
You know, I like the fact that you mentioned the Common Core Standards. That's very, very important. You know, I go about this county and all over the nation, and I ask parents, do you know about Common Core Standards? They say, what's that? So you have it in this book, and this is really, really great. I'm glad to hear it. We want everybody to know the Common Core Standards for reading and language arts.
Reading and language arts, it teaches multiple disciplines. One of the main features of Common Core is that you teach multiple disciplines at one time. So when you're looking on one page, and the way that we have the key ideas and everything highlighted on the page, you're learning about science, and you're learning math, and you're learning language. Because throughout the entire book, we teach the name word spellings of numbers in both English and Spanish. We teach history on the same page that we're teaching about continents. We're talking about different, we're combining it all together. So I had a teacher to tell me, you know, she said, this book is a unit within itself. She said, do you have a curriculum accompanying it? I said, well, I never thought about it. I'm really just a poet. I'm not a teacher by trade, so I don't know what a unit is. And she said, no, you know, you've developed a unit, because I began to share with her the different games and activities and ideas. And so I was like, oh, wow, you know, innately I'm doing something that teachers are doing in the classrooms, and that they can use it as supplemental resources. So when you're teaching on continents, you can pull out the book and say, okay, not only are we going to teach on continents, which is geography, it teaches days of the week, and it teaches about passports and how you travel to these continents. Excellent. So you're teaching all of these different things in one lesson.
Well, you know, Cola, I teach reading improvement at the University of the District of Columbia Community College. All of my students will be required to view this video on YouTube. Excellent. Do you have any tips? What are some of the tips that you would suggest for reading literature, children's literature?
One of the things I would say when you're reading, before a child begins to read, make sure that they're confident that they have the ability to read, and that they're confident to take on new words that they will learn in reading. Because we're reading not just to be familiar with the content, but we're also reading to learn. And so when you're reading to learn, you need to understand that there will be words on the page that you will not know. that you may not understand, but that's why we're reading, so they can feel comfortable taking on the challenge of reading new material. I would also say reading aloud, making sure the environment is conducive, making sure that they're comfortable. You know, I'm an artist by heart, so I love taking off my shoes. I love, you know, sitting outside.
Comfortable, huh?
But I love being very comfortable. And so when I did work with children, I created a throw pillows in the classroom and let them, you know, find their area where they're comfortable and let them read in their own space and give them a moment to read and listen to themselves read. Because a lot of time when you're reading audibly and you're hearing yourself and what you're reading, you're learning, you know. And so also teaching them how to read word by word and recognizing what the punctuation is, you know, teaching, you know, before a child picks up a book, one of the things I say, do you recognize at the end of this sentence there's a line with a dot underneath it? Well, this is an exclamation point. So that means when you read this sentence, you give a different emotion. You have excitement and inflection in your voice, as opposed if you're reading if it was just a period. So you need to make sure that they're familiar with punctuation. You need to make sure that they understand the key ideas of the story. So you discuss, what are we going to read? You know, when you pick up the newspaper, you say, okay, I'm going to read this section about economics. So you know you're reading about money and in economy. When you're reading about weather, okay, so I know that the key thing that I'm looking for in this component is weather and the temperature and if it's going to be sunny or rainy. So they need to know the main theme of the book that they're reading. The environment has to be conducive. They have to feel comfortable reading to learn. Please encourage your children to be comfortable that they are reading to learn.
The same thing as reading with understanding.
Yes.
Yeah.
The same thing, reading with understanding.
Yes. You know, some of my students asked me the other day, said, Dr. Williams, I want to write a book. And I thought, well, that's possible because my granddaughter wrote a book some time ago, and she was just in about the 7th or 8th grade.
Wonderful.
So they can write books. My students can learn how to write a book just as you, right?
Yes, sir.
Just as I have.
Yes.
Yeah. And have any points?
When writing a book, I always say journal every thought. And if you can't journal your thoughts, put it on your cell phone and read it out loud or write it and then go back and put it on paper. There are a lot of things that you can do at home as opposed to paying all this astronomical fees to have someone help you with your book. You can copyright from your home. You can do editing, you know, have editing. You can self-publish very cost effectively. By doing just a little research and a little lit work. So if you're going to publish a book, make sure you have your ISBN number, your UPC codes, your copyrights, because you don't want to publish anything and it doesn't belong to you. And then you want to make sure that it's edited. You want to make sure it's proofread. And then when you go to a graphic designer to lay out your book, you've done all the groundwork. You know, $33, you know, go downtown and copyright your work. You know, and go online and buy your UPC code or buy your ISBN number, and then just go out and start doing it.
How do you like this?
I
How
think
do you like this book?
I love it. I love
Put
it.
that on camera.
By Martin Luther
My daddy, Dr. Martin Luther
King the Third. Yes. Oh, there are many of us writing, aren't there?
Yes.
Yes. But we need to share what we are doing, and that's the reason, Cole, I'm just so impressed with what you're doing.
Thank
Because
you.
this is just, if this is your first book, this is just the beginning. I know you have many places to go and many things to do. And we want to see that happening. Ed?
Yes.
Would you agree?
I agree.
Thank
Tell us a little bit about your background. You were telling me something about you started writing when you were in kindergarten.
Yes, I've always knew that I was a writer. I would write letters to God and dear God poems and letters, and in kindergarten we had a writing assignment. But the one that really sticks with me is my first grade teacher, Mrs. K. I'm from a small town in Louisiana, Natchitoches, and Mrs. K asked us to write what we call today a manifesto. What do we want to do when we grow up? And so I wrote this small summary about I wanted to be an author and a radio personality, and I described how I wanted to look and everything. And That was first grade, so that was probably like 7
So you
years
were in
old.
first grade.
I was in first grade. And I went on to college, and my degree was in radio broadcast journalism. And after graduating, I did some work on like with in media. And so one day I was here working at a radio station, and I looked over to the mirror, and there was sitting in front of me was this, in front of a radio, in front of a microphone, just as I had drew it in first grade, with huge hair. That was the girl that I drew in first grade. I was like, oh my God,
You had the bush.
I had the bush, the Angela Davis bush, and I was in front of a microphone, and it was like what I had written about in first grade had come into fruition 30 years later. And I always knew I wanted to be a writer, and I always encourage parents to help your child discover their passion, the thing that encourages you when you're doing it. You can do it for free. The thing that frustrates you when it's not happening like you want it to happen. The thing that pays you in an unmeasurable amount of feeling of gain and encouragement and confidence, even if you don't get a check for it. The thing that puts you to sleep at night, the thing that wakes you up in the morning. You know, this is your purpose, this is your passion, this is what you should be doing with your life. And if you're doing what you are meant to do, then the wealth and the abundance of that from the material gain side will come. You know, I took a job after graduating college. You know, my grandfather's like, I don't think you want to work. I'm really convinced you don't want to work. I'm like, I do want to work, but I want to work doing what I love. So I took a job, and you got a paycheck, and, you know, I was doing, you know, you have your nice car, and you're glammed out in your clothing, but I was so unfulfilled. I was so unhappy. And so I positioned myself to resign and become an entrepreneur. And the reward that I feel doing this as an entrepreneur, as to, you know, getting that check every 2 weeks, the reward of doing this is far greater. It's far greater. I have more confidence. I feel more comfortable. I love myself more. There are moments in my humanity that I'm discouraged, but it's not because I feel bad about what I'm doing. It's like I want it to happen now because it's so real to me that it has to work, it has to happen. And when time hasn't met that season in my purpose, and I'm not understanding like why it's not working now, that's the only time I may feel bad about it. But for the most part, I love what I'm doing. I'm like, this is what I was born to do.
Well, tell us a little bit about Entrepreneur. This is the thing that I've talked about, that young people have to get involved in, being an entrepreneur, working for yourself, being satisfied. Tell us a little bit about that. You have done it.
Working for yourself, one of the things I would say before you begin, write down your vision. Make it very clear what you want to do. You know, innately I have a lot of talents because I'm a creative person, so I can style, I can write, I can do a little bit of drawing, but I had to find the one thing that really worked. So it was being an author and a speaker, advocating for reading and writing and literacy. So I had to hone in on the one thing and then say, okay, eventually those other things will take place based on this one thing. And then I had to delete every debt that I had. So that means I had to take the luxury car that I had and say, okay, either I'm going to sell it, or if I'm not finished paying for it, I'm going to pay it off. Then I had to say, okay, I have to stop the spending. I have to cut back on, going into your Neiman Marcus's and spending all this money and stuff. So I had to position myself because I had tried it twice. The first time I tried it, I took my savings and I said, okay, I've traveled and I lived it up and I went here and I went there. And I said, this is not going to work. So I ended up being broke. So I went back into the workforce, fortunately, because I have a degree and I was able to go back into the workforce. So the second time that I did, I was like, it has to be different because going back is not an option. Eddie Murphy said something one time. They asked him, they said, well, if you couldn't be a comedian, what would you be? He said, there was nothing else that I can do. So there is no second option. There's no option. This has to be it. This is all I know.
You had to convince yourself of that.
I had to convince myself, so I have to write it down. I have affirmations all through my house. I have it on my phone. You know, I am an author. I'm a motivational speaker. I'm a child advocate. I've written it down. It's everywhere. You know, I say it all the time. I'm constantly speaking it. But I had to position myself financially, because one thing is to be an entrepreneur and be in debt. And you know, you can go out and have a great product, and then you leave someone. It's hard for you to take a rejection and hear someone say, we don't need your product at this time, when you have $5,000 worth of bills in front of you. So I had to eliminate my debt. I had to really cut back on my spending and say, I have to position myself to be successful. So when I go out into the world and share my product, I don't owe anyone anything. So my book has been produced with no financial obligations to anyone. I don't have a car note. I don't have a lot of MasterCards or credit card bills. So I had to put myself on a diet, a spending diet, and you know, it's uncomfortable sometimes when you're used to just spending just because, and you're used to buying because you want to feel good and, you know, sleep on Egyptian cotton, you know, and stuff like that, or you want to just have, you want to go to the Starbucks and just drink coffee because it looks fashionably, you know, savvy.
Profiling.
Yeah. So, you know, I was all of those things, but I had to cut back. I had to restructure. So I would say to any entrepreneur, first of all, make it very clear. Put together a team of people, because you cannot do it by yourself.
Right.
Seek individuals who have done this. There was no one in my family who's been a published author, but there were people in my family who were successful entrepreneurs. So I can go and find their business savvy and then apply it to the career path that I've chosen to be an entrepreneur in. And if you don't have that mentor or that elder to guide you, I would encourage you to find one, or find books and literature that can help you develop a plan. Then get out of debt. You know, get out of debt. I feel so, you know, I went from a luxury car to a little car that I found for $1,200. And when I first did that, the first thought to myself was, you know, I have to explain to people, oh, well, you know, I used to have a luxury car, but I was like, why? That means that I'm not affirmed by the choices that I've made. So I'm still feeling like I would have to meet the approval of someone else. And so I had to become complete. I'm doing this because at the end of the night, I'm not going to work to pay a luxury car note. I'm going to work to invest in my life and the quality of the person that I want to be. So I feel great now that I can ride in my $1,200 car and not feel like I have to get up and go to a 9-to-5 and do something that I...
Yes, 9 to 5. Then.
Yeah.
That's it. Well, tell us a little bit about this project that you had at the barbershop, as far as your book is concerned.
I have a program called Barbershop Book Buddies, and what it is, I encourage barbers to purchase the book that I've written, I Count for Something, and then when young children come in, to read to them while they're getting their haircut or while they're waiting, or encourage their fathers to read to them while they're waiting to get their haircut. Oftentimes, when a little boy goes into the barbershop, there's a lot of barbershop talk going on, which is great, and he's spending time with his dad.
Mostly sports.
Yes. But, you know, how often do you see a little boy being read to by his dad? You know, we see a lot of mothers reading to their sons, but for a little boy to see another man reading to him lets him know that it's okay to read, it's okay to learn, it's okay to be educated. You know, it's not just, I'm not just this manual machine. I'm not just required to do physical things. I'm required to use my brain and to empower myself with knowledge. And it's also a bonding experience. And so a lot of barbers, especially here in the Prince George's County community, have jumped on board. It's a movement.
Yes, that's a great movement.
I like
very
that.
practical
I like
movement.
That. We need to get some of the evolutionary elders involved here.
And something like that, having the male involved, they're trying something in Prince George County now, but your involvement with at the barbershop, you know, is a great deal there that most people should feel they should be part of, you know, because this teach the child quite a bit about the male, you know, because usually the male, like you say, generally is not. So Cola Lewis, she's here with this fantastic I Count for Something. And that's so very important. You need to, when you do that, look in the mirror and look at yourself. And then you talk about, you do count for something. Well, you don't have to have that big car, just like she said. You don't have to have profile. You don't have to be profiling. You be doing something positive that you want to do. And I'll tell you, entrepreneurship is the greatest thing you can get involved in. And this young lady here shows you that it works. See you next time.